Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so she's still sleeping, and now what we'll do is we'll come in and we're going to paint a cool one. So I have again just got gray background. These backgrounds I just use gray, a medium white, a little black and white. Extra makes it more, a little bit more gray. And then I'll come in and I'll sketch a design. Now I'm going to use my smaller, older brush here, and we'll just take a little brown matter here. Start grabbing some of that quinacridone by mistake. Thin this out with a little water. Burnt sienna. I love burnt sienna and brown matter together here to sketch some of this. And that's a pigment that you could use very well in some of those yellow flowers. Is that burnt sienna on some of those. I didn't use that too much on the last one, but we certainly could. Let's come in here. So this is a cool one. This is some wild roses that I painted. Here's some daisies that I painted here. And one of the things that's really lovely about this particular technique is leaving some of these marks. See these little marks that you come out through here like this on this smoother base and leaving some of those marks. That's really pretty. Let's come in and let's paint a larger rose with some smaller ones here and maybe some smaller flowers with it. So we'll put a rose. We'll keep it kind of let's not get too wild and crazy with this. Let's put a gaze here, and I'm going to go more vertical this time. And then let's put some of these beautiful kind of wild roses here coming down to the side here. Let's put so our stem will come up like this. Let's bring this other stem of some other flowers here coming up and around here. And we might toss in a third type of little flower coming down here to this side. So we get a little difference to our composition here. That might work out pretty nice here. And yeah, we might end up stepping back just a touch here with this. So let me step this back just a touch. There we go. And that will help quite a bit here. Okay, so we'll see this, and we can have some stem coming out here. That'll work. Now, like I said before, one of the things I like to do sometimes is come in, set the gaze or set the shadow side to a particular rose. Since this one's going to be really cool, we could add some red violet to that and really start to cool down that side. And this is what way I want you to paint. I know you get kind of like, oh wow, but that's a little crazy here. And yeah, it is a little crazy, but what it does, it is so very important. So many of you write to me or talk to me on Facebook or in our forum, and you say, I just can't get that casual nature. Sometimes you have to get a little crazy and put on something that is quite shocking. I started some quick compositions last year. And with these quick compositions, I said, what you really got to do is you've got to shock your system to become more casual. And you put on something that you don't think that you would just like never do. And then that causes you to think your way out of it and do things differently. The problem is, see, we get into these ruts and we keep doing things the same way. And so you got to shock that system. So here I step back with these long handle brushes like this, and I'll, like do a little bit of sketching. Like this might be the center. Let's push the center down here into this one this way this time, and a center there. Let's push the center down low into this one here, and set this one coming up here like this. So that one will come up like that. And and I just might come in here and just push this all down like this, real sketchy. And that is, yeah, that's that really kind of shocks your system here. Here's the light side and the cool side, and we'll do a little bud. Maybe we'll do one or two little buds right through there. And I don't get, whereas before with so many of my paintings, I get I start to shape up quite a bit, quite fast. Here I won't. Here I'll stay very casual, just pushing color here. That's going to be a light side and a cool side there. And I'll stay very casual, just pushing some of this this color around here. So now let's come in and let's let's go in and adjust and push in some of our blue color and stuff like that that we're going to have down through here. And so, or our background color, which I want kind of cool. So if I want it cool, here I'm going to key off a red violet. And red violets and purples and blues and stuff, they're just really pretty. And again, that's going to be that phthalo blue. You get that into your white. That's hard to get out sometimes. So I'm going to take a dollop of that over there. And let's just go right into here, right into these colors. This is kind of warm. This is kind of cool. And this makes beautiful backgrounds here. I can head more to the blue side if I want. But I get these purples in here. And this will warm. This will go this way. This will cool. It'll feel cooler. And these are beautiful sets of backgrounds like this. Just work these colors in there. And I might work it a little bit transparent on this gray background here. Cause it to be a little bit different. Let's just streak some of this out and through like this. And you know, this is today, these types of looks are so popular in flowers. They're so casual and popular and beautiful. Different, you know, they're different. I'll paint off the edge here. And you know, I might hit just a bit of that warm right here and just take some of that out just to break up some of that color there. And we'll come back here. We'll push that in. Push this in over here. Maybe a little bit out here like that. I can get more violet or blue into something, a little, you know, change in some of that temperature, you know, some of that around. But, you know, usually when I start to head up to the top, up towards that light, I like to warm it up a bit. And getting over here, too, with a little bit of yellow is nice. A little bit of our yellow oxide into that is nice. Here, get some of that color in. Here, let's drop this way down so you can see the top of that. Actually, that's just a little bit high there. Let's just push this right into the bit here. Separate that so I don't paint on that other one. Since that one's sold, I got to be kind of careful. And we'll come out, push this up and down here. Let's just move some of that light that just hit right there, right into the background there. That's how casual I get my particular backgrounds. We'll go way up here to the top, so it's kind of off camera here. And I'll just kind of soften this right off here like that. There we go. And let's push just a little bit more here, just to soften this edge. I'll even let some of this other original background set in there for right now, just like that. There. Yeah, that looks like it's a pretty good start to the background. So now that we have that good start, now what we're going to do is come in and start to say, okay, where are we going to want our colors? Now, if you want a cool painting, so we've got a cool background and stuff, and if you want a cool painting, then what we want to do is we want to keep some of our flowers really expressed to the cool side. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll come in and say, okay, let's really get some cools down there. So let's work our cools for just a bit. I think I'll put this 3/4 inch brush down for a second. We'll go back to my number 10. And let's get into some cools. I want to do kind of a white rose there into the center, but I really want to have these cool violets. Pretty cool. The overall feeling of the flower must be cool. So I'm going to take some Quinacridone Violet here. And I'll have some of these warm colors just to soften that a little bit. But let's work that right down in through here to the cool side of the road. Now, sometimes I paint with high contrast. Sometimes I come in and cool like this first and then go back to my high contrast. And see, that puts in already a nice cool feeling to your flower that you might want to have. And we'll have some cool ones right up here. We'll change these colors up here a bit, but yeah, we'll cool. And let's put up a bud there, maybe a bud coming down up over here. And it's just nice to track a a beautiful cool color through your painting here. Now we might want to darken down since we're heading away from the light. You might want to consider going down towards some red violet. But red violet is really icy cold, so I just added just a touch of my burnt sienna and stuff to it. So it's not quite so icy cold here. And we got that, and we might do a few rose buds or a few other little buds and stuff coming back out through here. One of the other things is onto a painting like this, you know, you might want to express some other colors. So we have one rose out through here. We might want to, you know, imagine another rose or something right back out here into the background here, and that might work as well. Let's get some cool color into that. A little red violet, a little brown matter into that. Let's stay, and let's put the gaze of that up like this maybe. And down here will be its shadow. Very, very soft for right now. We might push this way back here. We don't know. It's just, you know, I'm painting this with you for the very first time. Let's get some real cold red violet. Now let's come in and put in some of our contrast. Here's the center of our rose, the low side, cool side of our rose here, right up into this, right up into that area there. Let's soften out just a bit here, like I did with the last video, you know, softening out, but this time I'm, you know, doing the color progressions a little different. But you could use the same type of color progressions as the last one as well. Just keep your cools, you know, working your cool colors, because that, if you express your cool colors first, then your whole painting feels just a little bit cooler. So we'll touch that. Let's touch a little bit of that into our center here for right now. We may change up these centers and put some yellows around there, you know, like we have in these wild roses here. But this just gives you the feeling of cool. And that's all I want, is that feeling of cool. Where's that cool? Here, going into that one there. Okay, and you know, do we want to have one right back there? We could make it maybe just a soft little something right back here, turning out here. That's kind of pretty. Okay, now, you know, how much more are you going to do? You know, is I like to get some of this stuff on, and then I like to immediately start to go over and work on my my center of interest. Many times I like to do that, because that center of interest really kind of helps define. And like I said, though, if your center of interest is a rose or even a flower, I go back and revisit it and stuff. So I want to paint a little more contrast than what I had onto this one here. But the first thing, just like the other one, I'm going to warm up my color slightly. So I'm going to come right over here towards this other kind of grays I used into the background. Has some yellow, some brown matter here. I've taken some of my violets and stuff and moved it over here, but it gives it kind of gray. But a little bit of that yellow oxide in there. It's a beautiful color. These will make beautiful whites here. Okay, and I'll bring up a pretty good contrast, mottled color, but pretty good contrast there. Light color, and let's make that forward rose strike right there. Okay, now let's come back. Let's cool down just a bit, put just a little softer color into that, and pull that mark down just like that. Here, pull that down, pull it, maybe use just a corner. I'm using just a corner of the brush to kind of pull and soften those edges there, just pulling through and softening that bit of that mark that's right there. So I use the corners, pulling through, the corner of the brush, pulling through. So wipe your brush and use just a corner. You're thinking about pushing and dragging that mark around, okay? Let's get back to a little more light. Let's build an edge here, like that rose comes up around like that. That's kind of pretty. Maybe a bit more warmth into that. Down in here, before it goes down into that center, a little bit of yellow into that here. Push that around a bit, and I'll restate back into my center. I always like to push in, and I paint back and forth, and you know, I push and pull forward and push back, but I like to paint back and forth several times, especially into the centers there, a color, and I'll do this several times with this rose. But I've got a kind of a nice look started there. It's not defined, but it's nice. And I'll come forward here, and let's find the front petal here. Maybe that edge of that petal there. That's a good, and see, that's good optics right there. That would soften out pretty well. Maybe push another one right in there like that edge there. So coming forward here, maybe we'll use just, see how I push forward on my palette sometimes and pick up that little edge like that, because that allows me to just get a little textured edge there to that petal right there on that rose, just like that. See? And do I soften down in there? Do I do anything there? I'm not quite sure yet. I'm going to pick up some more white, push up through and pick up some more light color. Let's mark right here that petal here, that where that rose will come out right there. I can drop down a little bit, soften it out, and put in a softening little mark. But again, when you're painting optically, you don't always do that. Step back to that camera and take a look at that, and you may end up leaving that one like that. And I'm going to leave these a little more optic than I did on the last one here. So we'll little touches like this, little corner touches of your brush. See, each time I touch that, if I touch that in there, that softens that. But you've got to, when you do that, you've got to step back and look at it, because you can start, if you're painting it here real close, all of a sudden it can become very blended again for you. So you got to be careful. You don't want to destroy your optics here. So let's build a little more light stroke here, and let's just let this, we're going to let this rose here kind of start fading away here, and we might even use just a little bit cooler, softer color here and push in that edge right into here like that, and letting that rose just soften and cool down there like that, and let this modeling and stuff come in there just like that. Don't stroke too many times. Get in there, hit it, and get out. Hit the edge and get out here. Just hit that edge and get out. And I kind of like that, which I have that look that's right up there on that, and I like that. Let's touch a little bit more light here coming along like that edge. Maybe a bit more here into the center. That moving around into that center there. Bit more light here. That really puts that rose up front there like that. I may have collapsed down the center a little bit more than I like, but I'm going to leave it for right now. I'm going to take just a little bit of red violet though and push it right in here as a little bit deeper color here. There we go. That really sends that deep depth into the bowl there. Really sends that up. So let's come up and lighten and warm just a bit here. We'll come and pick up a little bit more white, drop it right into our warm. Let's work on the front of our rose here. Nice, big, thick, dollop of paint like that. Okay. And just bang right onto the front there. That builds that forward. Now, here's the edge. This edge is really coming forward here. Do I want to round that into the bowl? And I think I do. So I might tap in just a bit of my cool color and just hit that edge. Just break that edge just a bit like that. Just break that edge. And don't do too much more with that. Break that edge. Let's add a little bit more of a light here. There like that. Maybe a bit of a cool. And you can pull and lift off there as well. Like that. There. Let's maybe use a chisel right here. And leave that as like a little chisel of a petal right there. Maybe another little chisel right here so it looks like two petals. There. Now that's a little close, so I'll just take I'll wipe my brush and just lift off just a bit here. Just a bit of that texture off so I get a soft shadow right there for right now. And let's grab a little bit more right here. Maybe just to push a bit of that violet into your brush. Just lift off. 1, wipe your brush. 2, maybe just an edge and just put some marks there. Like that. That just makes that casual rose. That's what you look for. And, you know, if you want to capture an area like that, you know, you can just capture a few marks right down in through here like this that just keep that, you know, gives the movement of that side of the rose without painting too much. And it takes a lot of confidence to come in and just strike color like this and let that just stay out there. You know how much confidence that took? It took me a while. I'll push an edge right there and maybe an edge right there. And it took me a long time to be able to strike something like that and just leave it here. Now, I got that. I want to pinch wipe my brush. I'm going to step back on the handle of my brush way back here and just lightly lift off like that. Wipe that color off your brush and lift off again like that. And that's going to make it look like another petal coming out like that on the edge. It's kind of pretty like that. Here, now we can get some warmth, some additional warmth in there. We can get some additional yellow in here, especially to the warm side of this flower. Just a little yellow oxide and a tiny bit of white, and just kind of go through, shoot through some of those areas there and get some warmth into that there. That always looks nice. Maybe a little bit more of a white edge right there. Put white in the brush. There we go. A little white edge. Back to some of my yellow, and I'll lift off just a touch. There, that's pretty. Got some nice textures in there from that. It's kind of pretty. Here. Just looking at the marks, just quick little marks there. Let's put just a little bit of movement here into the center. Around like that. That's pretty. That's kind of nice to, we'll put just a touch more light right out here, and then we'll go paint some other things here. And I kind of like that, you know, when you get those broken edges like that. That's real pretty. Let's go work on some of the others. Let's put in some soft yellow to pink kind of color, to the cool colors here. So let's get some soft yellow oxide, white, a little bit of our violets in here, so it's toned down just a bit, but it's going to be warmer looking. Okay, and let's come in and push some of that in and out here. Maybe a bit more yellow right around the center here. Let's get some of these yellows into the centers. Push that in and out. You can push it in and out with your brush, or quickly there do it with your finger. We're going through the softening process. So this is the softening of the colors, putting on, and then we'll come in and make the marks, more of the marks of the petals. So I want this, I'm going to shape a little bit of this up here and put a strike of a forward petal. But here I want to push some, just that warm in there like that. Okay. And let's push in a few marks for the edges of those petals. And again, I'm letting some of this warmth come in. Now, when you make these marks, don't stroke too many times because you'll lose the bit. So I'm just kind of walking it up like that and letting it disappear. But we want to, let's get more white and more yellow here. I want to put some real nice forward marks here. Petal that's bent up here like that. Here like that. And then I'll take a cool color onto the brush and we'll lift up from the bottom. Just lift up. That'll build that petal and leave that nice warm right up there at the top. Here. Sometimes I do that. I get kind of sketchy with the brush as I have those colors kind of starting to model together on the brush as I'm painting, and I'll just get real sketchy like that, and I like that. You know, over onto this side, we can head back down towards our a little bit darker, a little bit cooler, and just make some suggestions here of some of these petals. Don't need to paint perfect, just make some suggestions there. Just some movement. See, like little marks like that. Boom. You know, I saw like a channel of this color there, and I just come in with the corner of the brush and just touch it like that. And that's all it needs. And, you know, it's going to take you, as you're learning to paint this way, it's going to take you some time too, some practice, several boards, practice boards like this, to change the way you're painting, of looking at it as little marks, or looking at, okay, this is a little bit too stripy here, so I'll just take a mark and just touch that and break the straightness of it. That's what I'm looking at doing when I'm doing something like this. Okay, so yeah, it's a heck of a lot of fun. Let's bring in the light right up here, bring the light of this petal right up front here like this, kind of angled out, real heavy texture and light, and see how that brings that really right out towards us there. And let's see if we can work with that. Let's put some, then go right into our yellows. We'll soften some of our yellows out and around into that on both sides. We'll let the coolness now go to the back. So we'll start to cool down. Let's go over here to our palette and cool down the back of it here, going back out and around. Let's get some of that yellow right out into that center a little bit more. Back out here, not as light as what we did in the front, just a little bit of light here. Let's get these marks on and let that come back. See, I do quick little jabs and marks here, casual, lift out like that. Sometimes I'll take my big brush with some of that color and just push the back like that, right back in there. And sometimes I really like that mark to the front and soft to the back. And remember, we talked about that in the first one. You know, like the rose is almost cut in half, like these right here. That rose is like cut in half here and found and lost. And you know, you can do that same thing with some of your flowers here as well. These little blossoms or wild roses and stuff that we're painting here. We can do that same type of thing. So, you know, like maybe we'll bring up like a little bud here, or this edge here, and just let that fade around here, just like that. This one can be a little bit heavier of a mark right there. You know, right up in front. Cool this down here. Let that fade out there. That's kind of pretty. Let's get a yellow stroke or two right in here. Yellow and a little violet here right into the center. Little pull out. And do little jabs. Color here. That's kind of pretty into that center there. And maybe just a bit of light right there. So a couple of layers of petals on this. Maybe an edge out to some of this. Let's see if that's going to bring that too far forward. No, that's kind of pretty. Just a little quick mark, softer mark out there. Okay. And let's soften that just a bit. You soften it just by dragging right through the edge. Just drag your brush right through the edge, and that softens it. Maybe a little bit of a mark right here. And let's bring that petal right up on top of that little rose there. And so I take a little mark of a cooler color onto the rose and push that petal back down underneath it just a bit. Let's do it just a touch more here. There we go. So that rose sits up underneath that one there. And that's kind of pretty. So we can build that mark, that edge a little bit more texture right there. Here, like that. And that's what you do. You come in and you'd say, just like you do up through here, you'd like say, okay, here comes a mark and a mark. And these little marks right over some of that blended area there just add so much. So you just, that's the optical part of it here. These little marks just do so much. Let's just lift some of that out. There. There we go. Let's paint, so we got a real soft yellow. We can go a little softer yellow. It's kind of pretty here. A little more softer yellow into some of that. That's pretty. A little more yellow oxide and some white and some violet. And the violet helps keep that yellow oxide from getting too bright yellow. It's just a real soft yellow. You never imagine saying yellow oxide from being too bright, but it does, because it's plain. We're painting it with its complements here. So we got a nice yellow there. Let's push just a bit of that. Like I say, I like to carry colors, just a touch of it. See what it looks like in some of these others. Kind of dangerous here. I like the way that looks. So it's kind of dangerous. I'll put a little cool. Take just a bit of it out, but that's pretty. I like that color coming out of that bowl there. There we go. It's kind of pretty. Now, let's put just a touch more cool down into that center there. Now, we'll come in and let's grab a little bit more white, come back up over here towards our warm, scoop some of that up here. Let's scoop it up and put that mark of that petal right there. There. And I'm going to leave that texture there. You can see that texture. I'm painting now, you know, when I'm painting, especially these optical techniques, I give myself so much more freedom to take heavy strokes of color. And that's what really, now see, I'll just mark and mark and mark here. Let that fade away. And that's really what gives these flowers their power, is those textures and that thick color here. Let's put some texture right here. There we go. And we can push just a little bit of a shadow there to separate those two. I'll pick up some more textured white. Nice big thick dollop of textured white and just hit that edge there. And just let that sit there like that, because that will look beautiful here at the end. Let's put just a touch here. But it's these textures that do so much, you know, for your painting. And, you know, it's taken me a while to get brave with my textures. And, you know, all of my friends that I paint with and stuff, we've all, you know, myself included, we've struggled with getting the right amount of paint, you know, into the brush. It's work. It's, you know, I've come from so many years of acrylic. See these little marks, see? These quick little stroke marks like that. But it's work to get these textures in there. It's hard to get these textures in there when you've come from so many years of acrylics and where we don't get those textures in there. Here like that. And we'll push that around. There we go, just like that. And we'll get these different look to these flowers. Let's go up here. Let's put a warmer, not quite as warm, so we'll cool this down just a bit. Let's give it a bang, a warm side. These are going to be like little rosebuds here. Let's curve one kind of down to this side here like that. Let's go back towards some more softer, cool colors. Push those right in on this edge here. Push these marks. I'm going to let some of this granulation from the sketch stay out there. I love that. I might just come in there and it'll optically blend. but just put a few little marks right out there. If I soften this for roundness, you're going to want to have a little bit of a roundness to it. There, so I'll pull the front edge forward and push this side of it back with a couple strokes of, let's get a little more yellow into that too. A couple of softer strokes there. See how that pushes that side back like that. Okay, and I'll build that front a little bit more. Slightly round. There, like that. Now you see that little rosebud of one of these coming. I can, to really give it a rosebud, you can give it that little ovally shaped center that comes up and around, and that really starts to make it look more like a rosebud. Let's get just a touch of brown matter, red violet, right into the very deepest part of that. You don't want to get too much contrast there, but that's really what makes that. Let's add some little strokes of that down here to collapse this side, and maybe just a mark or two coming here into the front, like it might be opening up. There might be a petal opening up here, to that side there. Can put a little cooler and some yellow and some cool in your brush. Collapse that side. Lift off a bit. There. But leave these marks. And let your eye step back and see how your eye is blending them. Here. Leave those marks. Maybe a bit of movement there. Check how your eye is blending them. Let's get the center into this one. Just a bit there. Just a bit. And warm this up. I like these little marks. See those marks like that? That really brings it forward. I might put just a bit of yellow and some violet here. Step back on my brush so I'm really casual. And just push that edge there. Maybe just a touch of light here. Yeah, we might leave that here. Just a bit of movement. There, that just leaves, see, I love the casualness of those marks. We'll put a stem with that and that'll look pretty good, I think. But it does mean I could have a bit more white right up here. Nice white texture. And I'm just going to go bang with this white texture right there and there. See how that really advances that. Now, I'm going to just put a little yellow in my brush here and lift off. So you see it as two petals here. Just like that. But I want that heavy textured mark. And, those values are close enough that they will optically blend. Step back and take a look. But they will, they're close enough that those are going to optically blend enough for me, I think. And this is usually where I get up all the time and I step back and take a look at it. And it's one reason why a lot of people, stand at the easel, because it's easy to walk back and forth. Here, stand back at the easel like that. Yes, this is Kipper. So if you haven't seen her, this is little Kipper. You're waking up, huh? Here, you gotta stay down, babe. You gotta stay down. So she's here with me today. Now, let's keep on going here. And let's come right in here. And push some of this back. Now, I don't want to get too light, and I don't want to get too much back here. I just want to make it look like a little bud back here. So I want to get back here to my soft, very soft grays. And use that to kind of push and shape just an imaginary flower back here. And we'll just kind of push that back. Maybe build the front side up here just a bit, not too much. You'll have the light side and a shadow side, so put the light. And this could be a bud of one of these flowers that are just opening up. If so, we'll put just a bit more yellow in it here, so that's what it'll look like. So I'll get a little bit more yellow oxide. And we'll push that in. And see when when I put that yellow oxide in, your eye optically starts to say, oh, okay, that's one of those other flowers. And if you don't do too much, that's the whole thing about the optics. If you don't do too much, and see, I'm just making little marks, and these little marks out here are so important. I'll make a little petal mark there. And just pick up some of that color, and let's just make a little lighter petal mark there, one right there, and then we'll just let that whole flower collapse down there, like that. And it sits back behind this one okay, and if you're not, you can give just a bit more light right in here onto this one, and that pushes that other flower further back, maybe just a touch here on the back side of this rose here, coming back to that back side there, and that's kind of pretty, coming in like that. You can see. So let's come in, and it's amazing, you know, how fast you can paint some of these things like this. Let's soften. Usually by now I'm adding on some ideas of you know, leaves and stuff, but we're going to continue on here. Just little quick soft little marks here of what might be a rose back here. I'm going to let this sit way back here, so we'll push just a little bit here like that. Here just, and see, the lighter the color, the more I'm bringing it forward, so I don't want to do too much here before I say, because I want this to sit way back there, and be very casual here, just very casual movement here, not too much, just soft like that. And because that's really pretty there, it's got this, you know, really a different look to it. Let's come in and let's push some yellow. But we want this yellow a little cooler, a little more toned, so we'll add a little violet to it. Push some in here. Let's push some in here. So it's a little softer. A little softer because it's shadowing side here now. So we want to get darker and softer. We'll do a little bud down here. Okay. We'll lighten up just a bit here. Lighten up just a bit here, and we don't want to get quite that light. We can even get a little pinkier here, in and out like that here, and you know, because you want to give the impression of the shadow side here, so you don't want to do too much, and we don't want to have too many marks. We want to get the suggestion, just quick. Let's set this underneath the back side of this rose, so we'll keep that dark in there as well. Okay, but we can have a couple of lines here of petals, like that. A couple of lines of petals here, like that. And but that might start to come too far forward, so just tap through that. Just keep that soft. Let's stay impressionistic. We can get a little bit more light out here, like maybe it comes back and it hits the light right out here. So a little bit there. A little bit of the light right there. Like it hits the light. Here. But keep them soft. There we go. Let's do a almost like a rosebud type shape here. And again, when I come out to here, I'm usually just, you know, quick little strikes like this, just boom, and let these just kind of fade away. These are what I like to call the nothing flowers here. And I'll push. I usually use my brush, but so many years of the Paint It Simply that I love that look of the push too. Combine them both. This is what makes you artists, and this is what makes art fun, is the constant change that we do as artists. That's what makes it fun. We'll push a little yellow into here. Let's make this like a little opening blossom down here. So we'll just turn the light here like this. Maybe this is coming up and down like that. having this turn out down here like this is kind of fun. Here. Makes it a little different shape to it here, to this painting. There, like that. And quick little marks. So that's kind of soft right in there. A couple of quick little marks. Here we'll make it look like a few extra little petals or so right in there. That gives it its necessary interest. Here, like that. Let's drop a few marks right here. Now that might be too light. So let's just put a little violet onto our brush, maybe a little bit of that brown matter in there, and lift off through it. Bit of that yellow, which we want to keep in there. Stroke that through. There we go. Down like that. That just turns that. Let's add just a bit of light right out here on that dark. That softens that out. Just quick little marks like that. Again, step back. Yeah, that's good. Step back and see how that's blending it. Make a quick little, usually with some of the other lessons that I show in the book, I do just quick marks like that, quick little tone marks like that, and stop and and step back and take a look at it. Like this could be little rose edges here. This could be something else back there. But these little marks that are like this, you see, you step back and that'll look like the rose there. And how much you leave the mark and how much you soften out is going to be how much contrast and stuff you want to have in your painting. And sometimes I paint with a lot, sometimes a little bit less. Now, I'm going to come back and revisit this rose just a bit more right in here. And these quick little marks like this is where it really gets pretty. We'll soften that edge of that mark. A little bit of violet and yellow. There. And let those things just, optically, just let it soften out and step back and take a look at it. It's pretty, because some of this you can paint negatively. Let's go in, let's find some of our yellows. And remember, some of my prettiest yellows I like is the Hansa Yellow and Black. But we've got to cool it this time with a little bit of our like a Quinacridone Violet here. We should put a little bit of that into it, or a little pine green and some of the quinacridone out here. That helps keep it cool. So let's make this first kind of cooler gray color. Then we'll shift it over to the green. A little pine green here. We'll shift it right over to its green here. A nice cool green here. You can see that. We'll get a little bit of that glare off of there. We can warm that, just a bit of our yellow. We can get that yellow and black over here. I love these cooler colors here. Yellow and a little bit of black. Cooler brown blacks here. Brown greens. These are pretty colors into this composition here. Let's cool that. Let's get a little green, a little black, and a little bit of our Quinacridone Violet. Little pine green, a little black, a little Quinacridone Violet. And see, that makes just a lovely shadow green in here for some of our contrast of our painting. How much contrast do you want? I mean, that's more contrast than what I had on that one there. But you can slide it over to it if you really want it cool. Slide a little blue into it that brings that cooler blue look into the painting here. And I'm going to just suggest a few little stems here. I like to do that. Let's suggest a stem here and a couple of little sepals or something there coming out. Just a suggestion. Don't paint it, just make a suggestion here. We're painting casually and optically, and so everything we do is a suggestion. Let's get out here. We can make more definitive shapes to the leaves if you want a few of them, and then do some as kind of a casual expression of it. I do both, and sometimes I like to do that and then pull through like that and create that lost edge of the leaf right away. That's a quick way I started doing with Paint It Simply stuff, and I'll do it even here optically. Or you come back and you put a light violet strike on that edge of that leaf, and that will push it back. That's up to you. Here, I'll drag some of this out. I like to use the edge and drag a few. I like little stems and stuff coming out because those give different movements to the design. Here like that. Love that. Pine green, quinacridone, a little quinacridone into that. Real cools that right off. Here, let's set this up here. Little extender. There we go. Get some of those darker greens down there into the center of your composition here. And see, that sets those off there. It's kind of pretty. You can put a lighter leaf right through there, but if I really want to shove this rose back, I might put a leaf right here, right over it, and that will push it right back behind this other one for sure, way to the back. And then I'll need a little violet and green here, shadow, or you can have a touch of black or even a touch of blue in there, shadow. Push that. Let's get a little yellow, warmer yellow-green. Got to be careful it doesn't get too honking with all this warm, but we've got a lot of warm into those little blossoms, so we can probably get away, yeah, we can, with a yellow-green here. And that's kind of pretty to have that tone on there too. Just quick little strikes and edges. Just hit the edges of it. You want to make this little marks. Maybe I'll put just a light indication of a vein line there. But you really just need marks and suggestions there. Carry that color out and around. We might want a mark or two of that color right out here like that. Maybe this one hit there. That light hit there. Let's dirty this up. Get some of these violets and softer colors into these greens so it's really a grade green. And come back here into the back and get some very suggestive greenery going on. Little touches though of green, heavier green. Just little edges. You don't need the whole thing. Just quick little strikes, little edges of it. Stuff will give you a different look. Here. Let's just pull through a couple of stems. Here, out like that. Just loosen up that design a bit. Couple of little marks, little leaf marks or so there through that. That just adds so much to it. And use the corner of your brush, the chisel of your brush. Use pine green and red violet. It's one of my favorite brown colors. But brown madder also works really well into this. Brown madder or quinacridone, all those. Favorite. Now that's a little dark, so I'm just going to run my finger through it. I could soften it with a mark or just run my finger through it and take some of it off. Here. And how would you lighten that up? I'd probably do it Hansa. Hansa makes that brownish color just sing here. See how it lightens it up, but it's still a pretty color, see? Right back through here. Just drag some of that through there, back behind, real whispery back here, really lost, and whispery back here, behind this other rose that's back there. a little heavier. You can see how it looks different when it gets heavier. Let's grab just a bit of other marks. And this really helps with the long handled brush. You get back and just let it dance out there like that. Here, and just create that movement. You know, do I want maybe a bit more yellow and Hansa Yellow and pine and a touch of white here, lighter yellow green right on the edge, and I'll push back and pick up some of this color and just right there to give that leaf just a bit more punch, because it's really coming right into the front up here. There, let's just give it a bit more light here. And sometimes I'll strike like that, make that nice light like that, and I'll take that darker color and pull out, just create that movement. Wipe my brush, pull out again. There. If you don't wipe your brush, and I didn't wipe it very well, so you see I dragged some of that in there, you can redress back into some shadow. Poke it right up in there and pull back, and that softens that. And you know, again, how much you're going to do, step back optically and see how well that blends. But remember, there's something about having little marks out here that really add to the painting. These little brush marks out here that just really add a wonderful, casual, and beautiful nature to the painting. Here, let's do it this side. Let's do this side. Some other little color. A little bit of red green. Maybe a bit more color right in here to help separate those. That will visually separate those flowers there. You could do some right in there if you want, but sometimes I like the background to show up through there too. So, your call. Both work. Push just a bit more there on that edge. But you can see as those strikes and everything here, and you know, up here close, they look like a lot. But you step back to that camera there, looking at that, and it does not look like it's, you know, that much marks to it. It gets softer as it goes back. Now, you know, now you could decide here, do you want to put some additional color here? One thing that I do, if I show like a lot of a blue out through here, and I do this on several paintings. I don't know if I did it on this one. Yeah, I did do a little bit of that. When I show the blue, I'll push it to the shadow side. I didn't do it on this one. But I'll take like that blue and your violet here, and let's make it really light. This is going to be a very light, cool, I would call it the moonlight color. And so if I have a little bit of that blue there, I'll lighten it up a little more than my background, and I'll touch it just ever so lightly onto the shadow side of a flower. See how that, what that does is, again, it creates that harmony, that bridge harmony between the flower and the background here. And like those marks there, like that, just little touches of it. You don't have to do every single flower, but it's kind of pretty to have through a few of them. Here, some of that color coming through there. Even on your rose up here, a little bit coming through. It's kind of pretty. A little bit on here on the edge, right there. Just a bit of that in there. back up here, right there, a bit coming through there without, and you know, if it looks dirty or so, you're not light enough. You need to get more value into your painting. That looks pretty good. Let's add just a touch of it here and there through some of our leaves here. Just a little touch or a few light little strokes of it around. But that just adds a common bridge color through some of the elements of your painting. Really fun to paint. I have to decide, do I want to build, and I go back and look at this center rose just a bit more. Maybe I will build that center a little more warm, a little more white, so I'll come right back in here. I'm looking for a nice grade. Maybe I come in here and build that just a touch more here, just a bit more. And again, I like to step back and look how this is building here. Maybe that just helps that bull there. Just like that, and just I'm going to lift off some of that color. Like I say, I don't normally use my hands. I use my brush, but sometimes I just love to get my hands into the paint. Here, like that. That center, that rose, I kind of like that built that up, but it made that center look really dark. So let's take some Quinacridone Violet and some of our white here, a nice little cool pink color, and move that around through that center. That's a bit too much, so we'll push that back with a little bit more Quinacridone and a little bit more red violet here. And again, that's that push-pull that I say you have to do, but here, there we go. That kind of cools that down a bit. And we'll get, I'm just looking for some movement here too. I want that optical movement. Again, step back here. Step back and see how that kind of blends out. So you can see that I'm just dragging the corner of my brush. It's not blended in there. I'm just dragging that around. And of course you'll, go stand back and see how that blends it. And we'll look at that monitor there. That looks pretty good. So, take some of that center color out, maybe right out through here, and just lift off just a bit. That puts the center color kind of down into the other parts of the flower. And that looks kind of nice in there like that. It's a different way of building that. Start with that real bang strike. Like I said in the last one, let that granulated stroke come through, break up the edges and stuff like that. And here, working through some of the cools onto the painting here first before we started those darker contrasts, and then coming into your contrast. That works really well. That overall, what that does, look what it does for the painting. It overall establishes the cool within the painting, then your warmth. And if you go too warm too fast on this cool background, the painting gets that whole mushy feeling to it, and you have to, you have to be careful of that. But I like that one. Now, one last little thing here. You have to decide how much detail you want to give to these little centers. They should have a little bit of something going on, these centers. Maybe I'm just going to take a little corner of some Hansa and some light. Sometimes I use the green like I did over onto these. Or, your wild roses can have some dark reds and stuff that's on there. Let's first come in with a little Hansa white right on the corner of my brush. And see what that does. That's kind of pretty. Soft, and which I want to be soft. Let's just push a little bit right there like that. And try not to go out into the petal too much. Stay out into this cool area here. We'll just build a suggestion of a center there like that. And let's come over. Now let's drop down to yellow oxide. Softer. Little yellow oxide into it when we come down here. Just tap it with your finger or the other clear corner of your brush there to take some of the color off. tap it and then take some of it off, finger or brush or both, and put just a little bit back down there. A little hit. We won't do any in the rosebuds, so we'll put a little hit right there though, just a bit right there, just to say you did it. There. I think that's probably enough for that. Maybe a little bit of our quinacridone and brown matter here, just to put a little more center dark right in there. That's kind of pretty. So I just used the corner of the brush and threw some of my quinacridone and red and brown matter there. So push that center dark back in there again. Could have a little touch of yellow oxide as a darker yellow in there that builds that center up just a touch more heavier, you see. And maybe come back and just reset those lights one more time. Right there like that. Working that back and forth. Here. A little bit more dark. There, like that. You know, I could to give equal weight to that, to my main rose, I could go a little darker red. Boom. And what that does is it pulls that center color right back out. I don't want to go quite as dark, but closer to it. A little bit more red. Not red, but the quinacridone and the brown matter. Okay? And that's I think is enough. I think I'm just going to let that stay just like that. It's just enough, and it's a nice, softer little look to it. And I even like this real soft one back here fading away. I could, it feels like the backside here is a little big to me, so all I have to do is put a little green right in there, and that compresses that rose right back again, lets it die and fade away back there. I think that's enough. All right? Okay, so here, going into some of your softening colors, you know, we built that in the first lesson, built those roses and stuff with the softening colors. After we did some of that nice, you know, contrasting color. But building that color and onto the cool and then going to the warm. That is a little different than what I normally do with a painting. Normally, I stay very warm first and then go right into the cools. That is the normal, best way to do that. But here, one reason why I went this way is that yellow oxide is so powerful warm against this background, and it is an opaque color. And if you have it on your palette, you can get away with, you know, getting something back warm. What normally is the problem with the cool color, and I've always said this in so many paintings, and it is so very true, that it is far easier to cool a warm than it is to warm a cool. But here our cools are just cool and just soft, and that yellow oxide stays very warm and we can get away with it. But in most instances, that's really dangerous. That is very dangerous. You get the painting too cool, and then you can't get it you know, warm enough. But yellow oxide is your friend. It has that nice, powerful, and opaquing color to it, and it can come back in and really give the impression of the warmth to it. Overall, I have only small little areas of warm. The overall feeling of the painting is really quite cool. Just like it is onto this one here. There's only small areas of warm. And it's a lot of fun to paint those. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you, you know, get that Garden of Flowers, Volume 3 of that book, and look through some of the different techniques. Please take the time to read through the front of the book, some of the techniques I wrote in there. I took some time to write some of those. Look at the color mixes. We're going to mix colors differently. I love that black with you know, a little bit of black, that Hansa Yellow, and that brown matter. Those are beautiful together. And also that Quinacridone Violet into that. Those are beautiful colors to get inside and, you know, and mix those all up into your painting. And that's one reason why I added them here, okay? Thanks very much. I'll see you on the next video or on the next time you're here at the Jansen Art Studio. Hope you have fun. And as always, if you have questions or anything, just write to us to the studio, okay? All right. I'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.